Welcome back to In the Kitchen. So today we're back in the kitchen with the head chefs over at Funnel Chef. And if you haven't met us already, well, over at funnelchef.io, we work with coaches, consultants, and agency owners to implement proven recipes for success into their business so that they can attract more clients and actually generate more revenue and profits, all while avoiding guesswork, right? So this is taking proven systems and processes that have worked, not only in our business, but in our clients' business and even our competitors. And we've boiled them down to simple but specific, detail oriented recipes so that you can implement them into your business. So you don't have to be a tech guru, like a smooth talking salesperson, or just a genius in general to have success. Just like a good recipe, as long as you have the right ingredients and you follow the step by step process, you can also get great results. So, guys, I know we've actually spoken about this before, but Mikey, I know you were looking online, and I think came across an interesting article that was kind of going deeper into this topic that we've discussed, which is like sales qualified leads versus marketing qualified leads. So identifying the difference, so that in your business you can actually track and know what you're looking at in your system. And the article that you were looking at was mentioning conversation qualified leads, which is something a little bit different than what we've discussed in the past. So, I mean, do you want to just give us some info? Kind of walk, if anyone's listening to this who isn't familiar with what we're talking about, can you just walk them through like a basic description about marketing qualified leads versus sales qualified leads, and then let's look at conversation qualified leads.
Sure. Thank you for the segue, and thank you for giving me the big screen. I'm not sure I want this much attention, but it's all right. I'll take it. Um, so for anyone that doesn't quite understand some of the terms or phrases that I use in this section, we do have a small white paper at Funnel Chef. We have some resources that can help you out in just getting the basics, right? It's um, just as with any profession, there's certain terms, vocabulary, vernacular that we use that's kind of specific to our industry that not everybody's familiar with. So if you don't know the language, it's kind of hard to speak and understand. But I'll try and do my best um, to explain regardless. Essentially, a marketing qualified lead is a person that is within your addressable and serviceable market. And well, yeah, is someone that's in your addressable and serviceable market and you have their contact information for. Some people would say that, and I would agree with them, that they should have expressed some level of interest in some way, shape, or form. That could be reading an article or spending a good amount of time on your web page. It could be asking a question, downloading a lead magnet. There's a lot of ways that people express interest, right? Or that we can identify when someone is interested in something. So contact information within the addressable and serviceable market that has some level of interest in your product or service. Usually that interest is really because they're either symptoms aware or problem aware, and they're trying to find the solution. Now, when they have found the solution or they are fully problem aware and they're ready to move forward, they need to solve the problem. Oftentimes, that's been half of the equation for what else needs to be added to go from a marketing qualified lead to a sales qualified lead. So, sales qualified lead, right? It has all of those criteria that we just mentioned for a marketing qualified lead, in addition to having the capacity or being in the position to make the purchase, to buy whatever it is you sell, to implement the solution to their problem, and they're ready to do so in the relative near term. Okay, relative near term is going to be specific to what it is you're offering, how long your lead time is for implementing whatever solution, a number of factors, right? It's industry and solution specific. But that ground between marketing qualified lead and sales qualified lead is ground zero for say the sales and marketing war, if you would. That middle ground in between there is where most leads are lost because marketing generally is going to stop working or say it's now sales responsibility once the marketing qualified lead is produced and passed over. Likewise, your sales team is going to get burned out if they're working on strictly marketing qualified leads. So historically, the solution has been implementing some level of sales enablement or sales assist, cadence solution personnel, sales development reps that help bridge that gap, that take those, intro calls to get some qualifying questions answered, usually determine if this is a real need, if our solution is the right fit, if they have the capacity to pay, and they're ready to move forward in the near term, right? A well structured sales organization is going to have the salespeople focusing on the individuals, the prospects that are going to close within the next 30 days, typically, depending again on the type of solution that you sell. A large enterprise package, if you're selling, massive valves, your sales cycle may be 9 months long. That's a slightly different story. Here, we're talking a little bit more about sales processes that typically take 15 to 60 days to go from sales qualified lead to close. So I have oftentimes said, and this has been a huge rub with almost every marketing agency I've ever worked with and almost every client, trying to get them to understand that no man's land between marketing qualified lead and sales qualified lead. And I was browsing through some literature the other day and stumbled across an article by Conversica. So for those of you that aren't familiar with Conversica, it's a AI-driven email and conversation automation tool. There's a number of similar ones. Here at funnelchef.io, we have a similar capacity with our chat bots and things of that nature. And what they proposed essentially was that there should be a new step. And that step is conversation qualified. And that step is somewhere between about 2/3 of the way down from marketing qualified to actually sales qualified, meaning it's the spot where you want to start talking to, or the salespeople want to start talking to that prospect, taking them seriously and moving them down the chain. So, yeah, that's something I saw recently. I always want a term for that sweet spot in there. And I hate to say it, but as usual, somebody else beat me to it. David Greenberg, Chief Marketing Officer, Conversica, my hat's off to you, bud.
Yeah, I think there's always been kind of that joke, I guess you can call it a joke, but between marketing and sales, right? Where marketing's pushing over like, hey, here's all of these leads. And then the sales team's like, well, all of these leads suck, right? They're not good, right? So, I think for your business, it's definitely worthwhile in terms of just being able to identify and actually annotating this in your system, right? A difference in understanding it, but the difference between marketing qualified leads and sales qualified leads, because that is a difference, right? Especially for your sales team, that's a huge difference for them. But yeah, adding that step in now, conversation qualified leads, that's something I think definitely someone coming from a sales background, that's something that you can appreciate because obviously if you've been working in sales long enough, maybe this was in the beginning, but a lot of salespeople they've took jobs before and they're being told, hey, got all these leads for you. Here's these leads. Well, just calling something a lead, that's a pretty broad term. Like, what does that mean? Because
Yeah,
technically you could say, here are these leads. All it is a name and a phone number.
they hand you the
So,
yellow pages. Have you ever had somebody do that to you?
yeah, they just call, that's yeah, especially if you're doing B2B sales, right? There's like, hey, just here's a list of businesses. And they say, hey, we're giving you leads. But really, you just saved me from having to search through the yellow pages to find the phone numbers. But that's about all that you did, right? If you're calling law firms, like, oh, you just gave me a spreadsheet with, you know, 300 law firms that I can call. Okay, well, those are leads technically, right? But at that point, they're not qualified leads, they're just leads. And then once they become qualified leads, okay, are they marketing qualified, sales qualified, or even adding in this next step now, which is conversation qualified? Is it someone who's actually willing to talk to you and that they're ready for that step? Because anyone working in sales, that's huge, right? That's one of the bigger struggles of marketing is getting someone to respond, to actually reach out. But then if you're working in sales, are you actually speaking to someone who's willing to talk to you? Because if anyone's done, just cold calling, reaching out to people, you know, you're going to get like 80, 90%. A lot of the people that you call, they really don't want to talk to you, even if they answer, so you're always trying to find a creative way to have that hook, that beginning part of the conversation where they're going to like be willing to engage in a conversation with you. And I think adding in that step, yeah, like you mentioned, you found it, this article online going into detail about it. I think that's great in terms of it's adding another step, but it's getting more detailed. So, whether you have a smaller company or a bigger company, you're going to over time throughout the years, you're going to build up a database and being strategic with the way that you have that organized. That's going to be really important because you may remember all this information today, but you bring on a new salesperson, a new employee a year down the line, you want to be able to have a way where they can actually filter that data. So you need to have these fields, like you need to have these descriptions, these dispositions inside of your system, and whether that's a CRM or even if you're just using spreadsheets, right? Hopefully, there's not a ton of people just strictly using spreadsheets anymore, because we're past that. But if you are, still having that column in there, you can still sort through that data. So yeah, it's really important to understand, when you have leads, they're not just leads. And especially if you're trying to hire salespeople, anyone who's actually done sales and they're serious about getting results for themselves, they're probably going to ask you that question. And so if you're trying to hire anyone experienced, if you just tell them, hey, we've got leads, they're probably going to ask you a follow-up question about those leads. Are they just name and phone numbers? Like, are they qualified leads? Like, what does that actually look like? So
Yeah. So a lot of business owners fail to appreciate that when they give you a list of, businesses or people in their industry or the target industry, um, even if that list is 100% accurate, it has everyone's phone number on it, everyone's cell phone, everyone's accurate email on it. Let's say that's the case, which at least everyone here right now knows that's never going to be the case, right? A lot of it's fake, a lot of it's inaccurate, a lot of it's old, whatever, a lot of it's gatekeepers, so forth and so on. Only 2% of that entire group is going to be interested at any given time in your particular solution, or in solving the problem that your particular solution solves. 2%. So if you're asking your salespeople, these high paid, high quality individuals, which is what you want to work with, to call 50 people to find the one sale, you're absolutely just burning money. The same deal with, long form retargeting and conversation, like sales assist conversations, re-engage conversations. If you're only focusing on the people that express interest, and close within the first 30 days, right, on a typical 60-day sales cycle, then you're leaving 75% of the revenue in your database. Those people have to be nurtured and brought back in, because the reality of the subject is that 2% that's interested in a solution at a given time, on average, they're going to take 9 months to move forward. So, they're going to take a total of 9 months for 100% of it to move forward. The average is going to be about 60 days. So, yeah, having the automations in place, having the cadences and systems in place is absolutely critical. 1 in 20 of dormant leads, are buyers. That's the statistic. It's posted in the article that we were talking about a little bit earlier. Yeah, and 80% of consumers prefer a human and real touch, or at least a one that feels that way, which is why systems like Conversica or our AI chatbot work so well. So hope more people learn, and less less salespeople get burnt out by unknowing entrepreneurs.
Yeah, we know, and this is actually speaking about how you can qualify leads, right? I think I actually watched it as a podcast. It was an interview, two different sides of the coin. It was with Jordan Belfort and Grant Cardone, right? And so anyone who's I mean, most people are probably familiar with Jordan Belfort, right, from The Wolf of Wall Street, the book he put out that ended up becoming a movie with Leonardo DiCaprio in it. And obviously he did some pretty sleazy things in the past. And I think he's pretty open about about that. But in that interview with him and Grant Cardone, they were talking about, and I can't remember the exact specifics of it because it's been a while since I've seen it, but in terms of like when they're speaking with a lead, and at what point do they, and this is maybe very early in the beginning, right? This is when they're just a lead. This isn't when they've even been qualified, like marketing qualified, sales qualified, conversation qualified. But Jordan was talking about back in the day of him going door to door doing sales, right? He'd knock on the door. I think he was selling steaks. And that at what point do you walk away from the conversation, right? If the person's obviously telling you they're not interested, they don't want to buy, it's okay. Do you spend 5 more minutes trying to convince them that they have a problem that needs solved, or is it beneficial to understand that not every single person that you talk to is a qualified buyer? And Grant Cardone had the exact opposite um, reaction to that, where he was, and it felt kind of weird the way he was saying it, but he was just saying, well, everyone's a buyer. And that's absolutely not true, right? Not everyone's a buyer. A lot of people may be buyers, maybe they're not a buyer right now, but either way, if you're actually bringing in enough leads for your sales team to work, there's going to be unqualified leads. There's going to be people there who, whether it's unqualified as in finances, right? Maybe you have a lower ticket offer that could still help them out, which is a good way to catch that. But you're also going to end up having people who opt in, leads that you speak with, especially if you're cold calling, going door to door, reaching out through DMs, whatever it is, whatever form of outreach you're doing. You're going to speak to people who don't need your help. And whether it's an ego thing or grasping at straws, you have to know how to accept that, right? And that's where having these descriptions, these indicators, these dispositions for leads as marketing qualified, sales qualified, conversation qualified, it's going to be really important if you're trying to scale and if you actually have a decent sales team, because you need to be able to track everything. And if you're not tracking things, how are you going to know what's working and what's not working, right? And this actually brings us like right into the second topic that we wanted to discuss was, or yeah, do you want to add something? I think you're on mute.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can we just have a quick aside on the hilarity of that interview between Grant Cardone and Jordan Belfort? It was a dong measuring contest from the jump.
Yeah, it was a little it was interesting to watch. Yeah, Grant is definitely trying to one up him on everything.
Well, and the thing is, like, I've seen, so I've studied both I've studied all of their materials, along with pretty much every other, you know, sales guru, persuasion, expert. Um, and the fact of the matter is, Grant Cardone was just being a jerk off in most of those segments. He, in his own training, talks about qualifying and heavy qualifying, where I think the disagreement was or is, and it wasn't highlighted there, but people should be aware. Everyone is a buyer for something. They may not be a buyer for your solution, but they are a buyer for something. So when you can't sell them it's your job and duty to help them find the better solution, to refer them to someone else. That's kind of what Grant teaches. That doesn't apply to the scenario with steaks, Uncle G. I'm sorry. And I personally agree with Jordan Belfort and the way that he qualifies, which is how you should put together your ads and front end piece of material that's supposed to, stimulate action, which is cut the wheat from the or from the shaft, get to the point. Are you in the market or are you not? Because if you're not, I need to move on to the person that is, because it is a numbers game. That's the old school view of sales. Give them the yellow pages and have them call until they stumble across that person that's interested. That's what, why we developed the systems the way that we have. Sales forward marketing systems is what we call them, client acquisition, right? Is because we're letting the automations and technology take that burden off of key personnel. So, but hilarious interview. If you've never seen it, you should watch it. Highly recommend. Highly recommend. But don't completely listen to everything that they say, because they're more interested in one up on each other than making sure to even be accurate with what they've said previously. So,
Yeah. Well, and just like anything in life, right, with your business, everything there, all the tools that we have available, like today, they're tools, so you want to know how to use them, but they're there to make the job easier. Um, whenever someone first invented, how far back this was, right? Probably cavemen, when someone invented the idea of what is like today, like a modern hammer, it's not a fix, like a solution to fix everything, but it's there to help you get that specific job done, which is knocking a nail or something into something else, right? Or maybe it's bashing another caveman on the head, right? Same thing. But on that sense as well, kind of mentioning that everyone is a buyer, right? That's where a lot of the people that we work with, we're really, big on doing affiliate work, right? If you know someone else that you have connections with that maybe answers or fixes another problem that you don't directly fix, having those relationships are not only could be like financially beneficial, right? Because you can refer work over whatever sort of compensation you have associated with that, but you can also help more people, right? Maybe they're not the fit for you, but maybe someone else that you have connections with, like they fix that problem. But going back to the steaks, door to door sales, right? That's kind of looking at, maybe someone's a vegetarian, right? They're not the person to buy your steaks. So there is, an idea of when it's time to walk away. Um, and maybe walk away is, you could leave them with something when you walk away, but not everyone's there to buy like your product. You're not the right fit for everyone. You don't have to be. And it's just something that's, worth accepting, because if you don't accept it, you're going to waste a lot of time trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. But I do think this goes into the next segment, and we've talked about this before as well, but I think it really fits in here discussing this is, is it your marketing or your sales, right? So a lot of people, if they're trying to grow their business, or maybe they're just trying, not even necessarily try to grow, but they're just trying to optimize what they have. It's a question that's worth asking, right? When it comes to, attracting new clients, is it your marketing? Is it your sales? Like, is it both? Right? Because it could be both, but is there like a disconnection there? And I know this is a pretty big topic, and we could probably each speak, for extended time about this, but obviously we've got like time, time constraints in terms of how long, we're recording this episode. But Scott, what would you say? So I know, because you've worked in, I guess, different industries as well, so you've seen it not only like from both sides of looking at marketing and sales, but you've seen it in different industries. What would you say? Like, what are some questions that someone could ask themselves if they're trying to figure out the answer to this question?
Yeah, I'd say some of the biggest things you're going to see is like knowing how to track like interest level. or like someone's qualification levels, right? I mean, if you're selling groceries, you pretty much know everybody's in the market to buy fresh fruit or vegetables or meats or something of the nature. So your marketing is just highlighting brand awareness and like maybe some very specific products to drive like people coming into your door. But definitely when you're, let's say you're an online entrepreneur and you have an offer stack, if you're just blasting everybody in your marketing process with a shotgun approach, then you don't really know if it's your sales reps that are good or if it's your marketing that's bad or vice versa, because you're just getting just everybody showing up because you're not too specific. You're not sending the right message to the right person at the right time. And so kind of to your guys' point earlier is being able to, why during that marketing process, you need to be able to then discover and identify what it is they're most interested in and at what level, right? So, that's where like lead scoring is a big one that a lot of people just do not do. Um, being able to track like, is this person even financially qualified? Do they have, if you're doing credit stuff, do they even have credit? Things in between those areas. And then based on how they're interacting with your material that you've very specifically put together on a very specific subject, then you can send that person better material on the marketing front. And then that way, by the time they get into, let's say, a sales qualified position, your sales rep at least then knows, okay, this person's interacted 3 to 5 times or whatever it is with uh, some type of information about mindset or something of that nature, right? It could be anything. So you're able to then transfer what you can consider a marketing qualified candidate to the sales qualified because of that interaction, because they're self-selecting and hand raising. But where you typically see that dropped or where that ball is typically dropped, yeah, is when no one tracks it. They just think I just created a catch-all. I'm not specific with my marketing. And then I'm just going to, my goal is just to get 100,000 leads in, and then my sales team is going to have to sift through that. And then, like to Mikey's point, that's just like kind of cold calling because if your message isn't very specific, you might just be getting business owners, but you could have 100,000 business owners get in and talk to your sales team like, oh, that's not what I wanted or needed. So being very intentional with your marketing message. So that way, by the time you're passing that information off to your sales rep, they actually know what's kind of going on. I think that's usually the biggest disconnect and how you see that struggle, as Mikey mentioned, is like, what's that middle ground between the sales team and the marketing team and making sure that their operations essentially are in conjunction.
Yeah, and I think maybe a short answer for that really is you've got to have the data, right? If you're trying to figure out is it your sales, your marketing, you have to have some sort of data, right? And preferably not a small like sample size, but you need to know because let's say for example, if you're using that example that you were just discussing, Scott, like what if so your sales team's just not closing at the rate at the percentage that you think they should be. Well, are all of the leads like did none of the leads make sense, right? If they're all bad leads, they're not going to be able to close. But so it's hard to gauge what your closing percentage is or should be if you're also not looking at the data of like the quality of the leads, right? So and that's the difference again between is it the leads? Are they qualified leads? And then you go even deeper, are they marketing qualified, sales qualified, conversation qualified? Hopefully by the time they reach the salesperson, they're at least conversation qualified, right? It's someone who is at least willing to talk to you. And that's where like we discussed, a lot of, what's really popular sales process is having a setter and a closer. And that setter, you know, they're almost like a filter in terms of, you want to make sure that it's qualified. It's actually like leads who are worth, or I don't want to say worth, but leads who are willing to actually speak to you and hear you out before they get in front of the closer. So it's just another step, right? If you have your marketing, a setter, then a closer, you're just qualifying and almost in a way indoctrinating that lead into your system, as well. But yeah, whether figuring out how to determine if it's your sales, your marketing that's the issue, you have to have data for that, and if you have a tiny amount of leads coming through, you're only selling to 1 or 2 clients a month, it's really hard to gauge that because you really just don't have enough data. Because you also need to look at the other variables, right? Depending on time of the year, um, like what marketing, what campaign people were opting into going into that sales process. So there's a lot of different variables, but again, that's just where it comes down to tracking and actually analyzing that data. And that's one thing with a lot of the clients we work with. They come in, not all of them, but a lot of people. They come in and they've worked with different coaches, different consultants, and they're all being told you need this like type of software, you need this software, you need this, you need that. And then so what happens is you end up having like 5 or 6, sometimes even more different types of software that you're using. And so you're collecting data in all of those. But if they're not communicating with each other accordingly, it's really hard to compare. And that's one thing, with our software, and I don't want to call it a CRM because it does so much more than that, but it's helped us also with all of our clients that they have one central hub to where everything's integrated inside of it. And it just makes tracking, it makes, your daily processes a lot easier because you're not having to bounce back and forth constantly and try to have all these different systems communicating with each other and just kind of duct tape together, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I was gonna like we had a client last year that we're working with at a higher scale in terms of like what their budgets were. Like to the tune of like when they're talking about marketing, they were doing anywhere between like 75 to $100,000 a month in ad spend. Um, but when I was digging into the numbers with them and tracking like their close rates per closer, because they had no filter in terms of the leads coming in, no setting, no pre-qualification. All they were literally doing is collecting name, email, and a schedule, essentially. Then the closing rates were actually looking like the closes were at like 2%, like this astronomically low number. And the owner was like, I just don't get why my closers are so bad. And we're like, well, all you're focusing on the marketing side is like cost per lead, meaning you're trying to get your cost per lead to like 10, $20 a lead, which is like cold calling. So then you're wasting a lot of time on the back end, uh, like with handling, 5,000 leads a month or whatever's coming in, because you're just focusing on just pure volume. But if you are setting up qualification standards, question and answers, so that, or even setters, like you mentioned, you're able to take the 5,000 people, boil it down to the qualified leads or those who present themselves as qualified leads, and then put those on the calendar with someone who can close them, right? And that's really the easiest way to track it instead of just, again, trying to do the catch all. Because, yeah, you could say a closer is a terrible closing rate if they're cold calling all day because they're doing 500 calls and only getting 5 people on the call, then man, they're terrible closers. So it's being able to set that qualification standard up through the marketing process so you can then determine if it is something that's either a sales or marketing problem.
Yeah, I mean, as a general rule, even without systems of you know complex systems, you can use a G sheet to figure this out, right? If you have you start with leads, quote unquote. To me, that's everyone in your addressable and serviceable market, right? So for those people that don't know, addressable market is the group that you could provide a solution for. In theory, like they're part of your market. Serviceable market is the group that you can actually reach and service. So it brings that down a little bit. And then within there, there'll be different levels of quality if you're scoring them to determine which ones are the low hanging fruit versus others. But I digress. Start with leads, then you need your qualifying questions. Start with leads, then go to contact information, name, number, location, email, etc. That's it. That's your marketing qualified lead. Then your sales qualified lead is going to be all of that plus capacity and interest. And from that spot, if you have made if there has been a successful communication with the person, they've been reached, then you have a qualified lead. That's what you should be judging your salespeople on, not how many they convert from everyone in the phone book. But trying to explain that to people is kind of difficult. The easiest way to do it is to explain the man hours that it ultimately takes to do that work, to call or email and then call and convert them all the way through, and show them how you can reduce the overall man hours and reduce the cost per man hour by segmenting the different portions of the sales process amongst specialized individuals, setters and closers, like you were saying. But unfortunately, not everybody is, as coachable and open for improvement as we would like them to be. But I know all our listeners here are, because otherwise they wouldn't be listening, right?
Yeah, and something, coming directly from this is, and I think this, depending on how we word it, how we describe it, it may sound like this is more aimed at someone who's looking to scale. So someone who already has a sales team and they're looking to grow. But I think this can also apply to like solopreneurs too, right? If you're the business owner, you're also doing your sales. I think that you still, this still applies to you because you still want to be able to put yourself in the best position for success. But, a topic that we've discussed with a lot of different clients, we've also discussed it internally with ourselves. But, like going off of that last conversation about determining whether it's your marketing or your sales, what ways can, we go about, like, how do you position or how do you put a salesperson or a sales team in the best position to succeed? And I think there's a number of things, a number of ways you can do that. Part of it is looking at, what assets you have in place for the sales team. Like, what ammo are you giving them? Are they prepared? Do they have a solid script, right? Do they have a Q&A sheet? Are there other assets or educational materials that they're going through during the training process, right? Because we've all seen, where a salesperson gets hired and you just throw them on the front lines and say, hey, you're a salesperson, just figure it out and sell this, right? That may work for some people, but that's not that's not really putting someone in a position for success. But it's also in terms of, that transition period before that lead or that prospect speaks to the salesperson. Did they fully understand like what the purpose of the call is and who they're talking to? Because that also is possibly putting them in a bad position, right? If a lead shows up and they have no idea what the call's for, like, what do you think the success rate is going to be with that? Right. It's completely different than someone showing up to a call. Maybe they've already viewed like a short presentation or seen a VSL to where they have some sort of idea. There's interest peaked. But Mikey, what would you say? Like, especially maybe this is for someone who's looking to scale. So they're building a sales team, and they're at that point where they really need to start putting this stuff together so they can get the best results, because maybe they don't have time to waste or they don't have money to waste, right? And they want to make sure that they can get the most out of their sales team, but also convert, at the highest rate as possible. Like, what's some things that you've seen or things that you would suggest that people do to position, their sales team, to have success?
Well, so first and foremost, you have to have a real understanding of the numbers. Most of us that are entrepreneurs, especially early on in our career, we're flying by the seat of our pants, doing things based off of what we feel works. But the fact of the matter is, what we feel works is what works for us, and is not necessarily repeatable for the rest of our team. It's not necessarily scalable for the rest of our business. And if we're ever going to grow, we can't wear every hat all the time, right? We have to delegate. So figuring out what your key performance indicators are for the marketing channels that you use and for your sales process and sales team, getting a system that facilitates and tracks that without leaving any room for human error is absolutely critical. Because if you don't, like I said, if you don't know the numbers, you're never going to be able to grow. And if your numbers aren't accurate and based on reality, or they're able to be manipulated by people, they will be, right? Um, from there, I would say, when it comes to a sales division or sales organization generally, I usually focus on three things outside of the systems component. That is the leads, the hiring and recruiting, and the training. To me, if you have good marketing and generate quality leads, then put in front of them, you hire the best, most motivated, hardworking people and train them well. You have the assets, everything like you're saying. You have ammo for them. They know what to say. They know when to say it, etc. And then you have systems that facilitate their process to a high degree. Everything else can work out pretty easily. I will add to that there is a fifth element of management, and within management comes your compensation structure. So, um, which what compensation structure is best for you is going to depend on your sales process and business model and industry, a number of factors. I can't just tell you flat out verbatim. That being said, I'm fairly partial to uh, draw with commission. Yeah, a purely performance based, no cap commission structure. Because what I found is when you can show someone, a real pay stub that you gave somebody with 4, 5, 6 zeros on it, it's pretty easy to recruit other top quality individuals.
Yeah, I think if you're trying to hire salespeople, especially if you're looking to hire salespeople who are commission only for the most part, at the end of the day, they are, truly going to be motivated by money, right? That's what they're there for. And when you hire them like that, where it's all commission based, that's 100% like what you're basically translating to them is that the work they do, how good of a job they do, that's 100% going to affect how much money they make. And so, if you want to keep good salespeople around, you need to be putting them in a position where they can make money, right? And that's going to come down to a few different things, right? Definitely like the leads, right? Are you actually giving them like shots? Like, no one's going to shoot 100%, right? But if you're giving them enough at bats to where they can perform and make money and have success, that's how you're going to keep good salespeople there. But it's also, in terms of your marketing, right? I think that's going to affect the leads that come in. But then also on the back end of that, right? What sort of content, like what do you have? What ammo can you give the salesperson so that they can continue to basically indoctrinate, right? That lead. And part of it may be like your actual sales process, right? What's happening in between those calls, right? What's happening, like what information is that lead or prospect viewing before the call? What are they also seeing after the call? Like what does that whole process look like? Um, but if you're hiring salespeople and expecting to pay them purely on commission, you need to be putting them in a position where they can actually make money. Because if not, you're going to be hiring new people every single week because everyone's going to be quitting because they're not making money. So there's definitely a positive and a negative to it. Um, as someone who's worked, done sales purely on commission, it's great when you make a ton of cash, right? That's the whole point. But right, but it's hard to make that money that you want if you don't have enough at bats. And I've seen it from both sides where I've done sales for a company where there's not a ton of at bats. There's also just like added pressure there, right? Because it's cool. I need to be like hitting it out of the park every single time with every single person. And for a salesperson, they do need to be performing at a high level, but you also, from them, they want to have enough at bats where they can actually have success because the truth is you're not going to close 100% of the people you speak with. And that's just, every business owner needs to come, to accept that, just because you hire a really good salesperson, that's not going to fix all of your problems.
110%. I would like to add to that going back to what a sales qualified lead is, having at bats when someone's pitching you a ball that doesn't make it over a home plate, doesn't count. It's got to be a qualified pitch. It's got to be qualified leads for those at bats to be even reasonable. And as far as hiring really good salespeople or sales professionals, sales leaders, in my experience, past entrepreneurs that understand and get a business, but are also looking forward to and happy just to be in that sales role, are oftentimes going to be your best first sales hire. And if you do give them a strong compensation structure where they can, it's truly unlimited, then they're going to do everything in their power to improve your business and improve your sales process and work like a partner in the business, even though they're not getting equity because of that strong compensation structure. So, yeah, I'm with you all the way on that one.
Yeah, when you're paying someone strictly on commission, in a way, they're betting on your business, right? They're betting on your product or service you're selling, but they're also betting on, your marketing. Like, are you actually able to attract the right people for them to talk to? And I do think I've seen a lot of people, they hire a salesperson and they expect way too much out of them, as in they're, expecting that salesperson. They're like, oh, well, this person seems really smart. They're a good salesperson. They're going to fix every problem, right? They're going to be they're going to be cold calling every single day, doing outreach on DM. They're going to be walking each person through the whole sales process and closing them. And I'm going to pay them, just a small percentage of commission, right? That's not how you keep good people around. It's also, you need to look at in your industry, right? What are your competitors doing? Like, what does their sales process look like? And how are they compensating like their team members, especially their sales team? Because especially like, with hiring remote closers, it's a pretty big network. A lot of salespeople communicate with each other, especially with remote work. And if someone feels like they're being asked to do things that are outside of their like position, or if they feel like they're not being compensated correctly, or how they feel like they should be, being compensated, or if they also feel like the company culture is just not good in like kind of a toxic environment, you know, there's no reason for you to think that they're not 100% talking to other people. And quiet quitting is a thing, and someone will do that, right? Especially for someone who's being paid full commission. They're 100% going to be looking over the fence every single day. There's ways to stop that, right? I think it's fair compensation. I think it's putting them in a position to have success, and it's also like company culture, right? If you're hiring reps every single month and you're making it like the Hunger Games, you know, where everyone's fighting against each other to not lose their job, you're going to lose some good people because of that. And it's also just setting up that sort of environment where no one's going to give you the courtesy of a 2 weeks notice, right? If they think that you're just trying to fire everyone constantly. Because at that point, again, if someone's partnering with you, they're doing full commission sales, they're betting on your business, they're betting on you, they're betting on your marketing, they're betting on your sales process, and they're hoping that the skills that they can bring to the table is going to complement that process and help them make money. And at the end of the day, no one's going to care about your business as much as you do, being the owner. But if you treat people fairly, you're paying them fairly, you can get committed people who want to help you grow your business. Guys, so is there anything you guys want to add on to this before we kind of close out this episode?
Just say, make a point of emphasis, like if you just hire somebody, it doesn't even matter if they're a sales rep or a marketing rep or anybody in your business. Make sure not only do you train them, you take the time to train them. The more time you put up front in someone's training, the better the asset and the more ROI you will get from that person. We saw it time and time again in multiple industries where you hire a warm body, and 3 months later, you're like, now I got to get rid of this warm body because I thought when I hired them, they would do this job. And the question you always ask them is like, okay, what'd you tell them? How'd you train them? What information do they have? What resources did you provide? And like, were you in a position to help that person? You know, did they ask you like, hey, how do you like to do these sales calls? And you say, I'll get back to you. And you never got back to them. Again, that culture. Um, so whether or not your onboarding is a week or 2 weeks or 6 months or 9 months, it doesn't matter. What's really important is providing that resource, like provide the resources of being available, have training, have ongoing training, have feedback sessions that are geared towards actually elevating that person. So that way, at any juncture, someone feels like they're actually a person, that they're a part of a team, that if they do have questions, they have the ability to ask them without getting their head cut off. And the more that they put into it, the more you're able to put back into them. And so it's a win-win situation. So I always think don't lose sight of, hey, it may take time to train these guys or girls. Like, yeah, sure, you want it to take time because long term, you're going to end up saving yourself a whole lot of hiring, a whole lot of extra training, and a lot of money.
Yeah, it's definitely, in terms of time and money being saved, if you spend the time to actually train someone coming on your team, it's going to be a lot easier versus just having to try to rehire constantly. And also, something worth being said as well is that, working in sales, it's, you want to feel confident. You don't only want to feel confident in what you're selling, but you want to feel confident in the process and your knowledge about it. So that's, putting someone in a position to have success, whether it's, like Q&A sheets, scripts, just content, in general and training, you want to make sure that they do feel confident in their job because, like people can tell if you're confident when you speak to them. And when it comes to, someone having success in sales, you do want them to feel confident in what they're selling. So not only in you and your business, but also in themselves. And that does come down to, again, the training, the ammo that they have. But it's also, again, confidence in their like job security, right? Again, if you're building your sales organization, you're setting it up like the Hunger Games, where you're just openly saying, "Hey, half the team's going to get fired next week, or half the team's going to get fired next month." You're not setting yourself up to really have success, and you're not going to get the best performance out of people either. So it's, I think morale and confidence, all of that's really important. Not only just for your sales, but again for every aspect of your business, because a lot of people would say that sales is one of the most important aspects of the business, especially if you're trying to grow, right? You need more business coming in, you need more funds coming in. And so treating that as if it's important and those people are important, it's yeah, it's important, right? Keep saying the same word. But thanks for joining us for another episode of In the Kitchen. If this is your first time meeting us, well, over at funnelchef.io, we work with entrepreneurs, primarily, coaches, consultants, agency owners who are looking to implement proven recipes for success into their business so that they can attract more clients and generate more revenue and profits, all while avoiding that dreaded guesswork, trying to figure out what's going to work, right? So this is taking proven systems and processes that have worked in our business, our clients, and even our competitors, and we've boiled them down to simple but specific, detail-oriented recipes that you can implement into your own business. So again, you don't have to be a tech guru, like a smooth talking salesperson, or just a genius in general to have success. So just like a good recipe, as long as you have the right ingredients and follow the process step by step, you can also get great results. So, if you'd like to learn more about what we do, who we are, why we do it, how we do it, and just also find out if what we do even makes sense for you, you can check us out online. It's at funnelchef.io or on any social media platform.